welcome to Walk and Talk Theoretically Asked Questions. I am your host, Sodi.
And I'm your co-host, Trina.
And we present to you Walk and Talk, the podcast.
So today we're going to talk about good and bad experiences in relationships and the outcome of that. What can happen from just a relationship ending. It doesn't matter how, it doesn't matter what happened. It just the impact of it.
So insecurities built from past relationships. And yes. How did that evolve? How did it start? So we start with the TAQs of what is an insecurity that you developed since a relationship went south? So being in a relationship, not necessarily something that ended, but something that you're possibly still experiencing, that you're encountering. What has been an insecurity? Do you believe that you've developed an insecurity being in a relationship with someone?
I think there are insecurities that happen, and first and foremost is when something ends, and first of all, especially if you got married, like you went through the whole process, like this is it, I'm going to give my all, this is my person for the rest of my life. So what happens when that ends, naturally you question, was it you? I mean, even if it wasn't you, even if you did everything possible, it was something that failed. And so it plays on you about, oh, I couldn't even make this work. So therefore, that puts a strain on your self-esteem, because I don't know, like for me, I give my all in everything, with work, being a mom, being a friend, and especially in a relationship, I give because that's how what's ingrained in me, right? And so when something doesn't work out, you're like, okay, so you question, why did you give? You question everything. You question if was it you? Was it how I look? There's different things that gets impacted.
So you're talking about in a sense of if there is like infidelity involved, or
if there's an infidelity involved, that's a whole nother impact that happens. I will say, what happens in your insecurities, definitely sexually.
Yeah. I mean, so not to interrupt you, but most of insecurities, I believe, come from infidelity.
Yes.
In most relationships, the majority of the relationships come and end because of infidelity, because of lies, because of all of these variables around infidelity.
It's true. I'll say this because every time, like I have a friend that every time I mention, oh, did you hear about something? Or someone just talked to me about something serious, and the first thought was, oh, someone cheated on them. Oh, and it had nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
Because that's the general thing, that's the common thing that happens. Oh, someone cheated, someone stepped out, someone. It usually is the common theme of why things ended, at least in different situations, people that I've known, right? And not just I've known, but just in general, like you hear it on social media, you hear it about celebrities, like, oh, you start seeing pictures and then you start seeing stories, and that's unfortunately a lot of people do think when something ends, they do think. I'm guilty of it. If I hear someone splitting up, like that's the thought, like, oh, someone stepped out.
And there's a lack of everything in behind all those little lies or white lies or behind closed doors. There's always that. It's some type of infidelity, whether it's emotional, because it exists, not necessarily sexually or sexually, right? But We all have bad experiences in relationships throughout our lives, starting with our families, friendships, and eventually relationships with our significant others. However, it is always a bad experience that we learn from, that impacts and develop the insecurities in our lives are the ones that come from relationships.
Right.
Like
it starts at home.
It starts at home. It definitely starts at home. So what are the things that we say that start our insecurities as adults, as individuals?
We're no different. We're all human. And it looks different for everyone, because when that the reason that he was no longer with the person he was with was they cheated on him and was emotionally abusive. You hear that. You don't hear men admitting something like that. You know, and I'll be guilty of that, to say that if it's something that was really bad, I don't talk about it. I don't talk about it because when you hear that, you think, oh, this person's damaged. Oh, this person has some healing to do, or they're going to be touchy about a lot of different things. I mean, sometimes it's true. Sometimes it is the case, but not always.
Yeah.
And you don't want to start something new with that stigma that, oh, this person's going to be controlling, they're going to be super jealous. And honestly, I mean, the insecurities that build, especially from infidelity, it does take time. It takes time to heal, and it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work.
It does. It does take a lot of work. A lot of the highlights that we can point out, that we can say an insecurity would be that is the lack of emotional support. And alongside of that is verbal abuse.
Yeah.
And it's as simple as the lack of responding to a text message.
Yes.
Or taking a long time to respond to it.
Yes.
Like, okay, so, or the way that you responded, or the calling, we have technology nowadays, and technology is so advanced that you don't have to call on the phone now, you can call through video. But why are you through video?
Yes.
Or not the response of, or not responding, or responding, but the video is facing the ceiling or somewhere else other than your face. There's just so much.
You know, on that note too, like, I think the things that's happened in our past, it also changes how we communicate. Like, I find myself communicating more, where I'm like, hey, I'm doing this, or I'm going here, and this is what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be back by this time, because it's programmed in my mind that if I don't do this, he's going to think this because of what I went through.
So do you feel like you're traumatized?
Oh, hell yeah. Hell yeah. Traumatized. And until, but to a point where I would have to say, hey, do you need any of this information? Is this too much? Because that's an insecurity that's ingrained from the past.
Are you worried this person is going to feel that you're just an insecure person and look down at you because
I guess that's the chance you have to take. Until, I think, for the other person, if you're the other person, let's say you're like, I've met someone that's just fresh out of a relationship that ended from infidelity. And they're doing that. I find that they're doing that, or they're the ones that's, what are you doing? Why didn't you answer? I'm gonna stop them right there. I'm like, if it's the opposite, where it's they were the ones that were cheated on, I'm like, I don't need all this information. I appreciate it, but maybe not as much. So I get where this may have come from, but I'm gonna communicate. I don't need all this stuff. I trust you. It was the other way around. And I was dealing with someone that was super jealous and super like, what are you doing? Why didn't you call? Why I called you? What were you doing? I honestly, if it was brand new, I would just say, listen, this is too much.
Yeah.
Because that anxious feeling would automatically spur up for myself, because I know for me that's a trigger for me.
Okay. So you're literally giving it to, you're explaining it from both sides.
Yes.
You would want them to have grace with you, but you wouldn't want to have grace with them. Knowing
No.
this is an extra jealous person and there's a reason behind it. So obviously that there are many aspects of different people and how they perceive insecurities. In some way, shape, or form, individuals have different types of insecurities, right? So you explained how you would love someone to have grace with you, based on your insecurities and how you are willing to communicate and go the extra mile on these things. But when this person is doing it to you, you're like, wait a minute, no, you're a psycho.
No, I'm not gonna do it right away. But I mean, especially if I'm interested in them, I'm going to communicate that. I'm going to communicate that, and if that continues, it's those. I will say from experience, it's the small things that you let go, that pass, is eventually going to be the reason why you eventually end things.
Yeah,
and it's no different from, like, it may just be in the insecurity part, but it can be something else. Whatever small things.
Absolutely.
You have to address those things. If it's something that
absolutely
bothers you,
yes.
If it's not something you can deal with and you communicate that and nothing's changed, my experience, it's only going to annoy the shit out of you moving forward.
The conversation is to be had for sure at that point. Also building a sense of safety and comfort around that person, and allowing them, if you care enough, right? Because there are folks that don't care and they either lead them on and then just eventually either let them go or build up with arguments and animosity.
Lots of it, a lot of resentment.
And a lot of resentment, they build resentment for not wanting to communicate. I think communication is a great way to build a relationship, especially when the other partner, one of the partners, or both of the partners have had issues with insecurities from their past, whether it comes from a relationship or from the parents, from the family members, from whatever it may be. I mean, even coworkers or bosses, I mean, that it comes from it, right?
Yeah.
So we have some TAQs here, and we'll bring that up. So what is an insecurity that you believe you developed since a relationship went south?
So I think for me, an insecurity is if I don't speak up enough or if I'm too quiet.
Kind of like what we were talking about right now, not communicate enough.
Yeah.
So you're like, well, you didn't tell me that. And then just keep going. So now you're over communicating. Would you say that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then to a point where for me, if it becomes too much, thinking about it too much, I just shut down and I go silent.
Yeah.
And because I know my boundary though, now when I find that insecurity, I become better at, I need this time for myself. I need some time because that's just what I need. And what about you?
So not long ago, someone very close to me shared with me that they have a friend who are in a relationship with someone who appeared to be extremely toxic. And this person obviously has lots of insecurities. The person was extremely cheating on them all the time, regardless of, they didn't care. And at the end of the day, this person, obviously, they left one another, the relationship, they separated, the relationship was broken. Months pass by and they meet with this other person and they get together. And he's showing now the signs of the for lack of a better word, the post-traumatic stress that this person incurred throughout this relationship is displaying it in this new one. And it's to the extreme where it's just unbearable to be with someone who is constantly doing those things, like being disrespectful, verbally abusive, because they're scared of getting hurt. So they feel like it's like a fight or flight mode all the time. Let me put my guard up, but in a fight way all the time. How do you deal with that? It's very sad. I can say that I've been in a relationship like that in my younger years, in my teenage years. And it's something that is extremely challenging.
Yeah.
To navigate through. It's not easy. It takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of courage to do as an individual who has never been in that position. Is it doable with grace and patience? Yes. Do you have to identify as a person when it's time to let go? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because it can become extremely detrimental to you as a person and your persona moving forward. Whatever insecurity that person had and post-traumatic stress is going to pass on to you in a different way, because it'll translate in a different way. And then you're going to continue it to pass. The cycle will never end.
I agree.
It will never end.
And I'll say on that note too, because of being in something similar, and I say this with complete vulnerability.
That's what we're here.
Seeing that from my dad, seeing that and knowing that was wrong, how things were, that I just didn't deal with it for years and years. And then until something similar happened, where the only way that I got through it was a lot of therapy. And I'm a complete advocate for it. If it's something that's from like emotional abuse, physical abuse, any kind of abuse, abuse is different in a whole lot of different ways.
Yes.
It's important to not just have patience, have grace, but also get professional help. That can build and build and build, just like a balloon. You put so much into it, it will pop. And that balloon is going to be you. You don't want that.
I agree. 100%. So the next TAQ is what insecurity has been the most impactful in your life that you've encountered throughout your life?
I would say just as a woman, just being, when I'll be really honest, when I get messages from my DM, from social media, from just people in public, when simple compliments, I get awkward, because it's not, I don't know how to react to it. Where there's a thought in my head, like, well, what's the point of it? Why are you saying that? There's a reason behind that. There's always something, and it's unfortunate where it's now a conscious thing where I have to tell myself, Trina, stop. It's a compliment. Say thank you. Just don't think anything of it. Let all the thoughts that come along with that just stop.
Yeah.
And it's something that I have struggled with.
Yeah. From your past experiences, obviously, or your past experience.
Yes.
We all have that, and thank you for sharing. It would be great someday to know, to share the real story behind it.
Someday.
Absolutely.
But honestly, I would say that that's been the most impactful, is hearing compliments.
Mm-hmm.
Because I didn't hear much of it. When I hear it, it's because when you don't get what it is that you need to feel good, those compliments, you put yourself in flight or fight mode, where you're just like, no, I'm just going to continue to do me, continue to feed myself and just pump myself up. But then when somebody else stops you and does the things that you've been doing for yourself, it's like, what is this?
The question is, how do you stop that, and how do you identify and give and allow yourself to receive what's being given to you? Because not everything is not real. Everything is real. Not everything is out of an interest of someone else. It's just pure and
I agree. And I think it only comes with practice, and time.
yeah.
And what about for you? What's been the most impactful for you?
If we're talking about the most recent, it would be not being woman enough. And I know that's very general.
What does that mean to you?
So not being woman enough has a lot. So whether it's being a wife, whether it was being a wife or a mother or a professional or whatever it may be, being in a relationship that was extremely toxic to me, not necessarily with a toxic person. Not everyone has to be toxic or have that demeanor of being a toxic person at a first glance to be a toxic person to someone else. And having to go through through that experience really made me question, okay, well, is this enough? Am I enough? Am I good enough? Do I need to do better in this area or that area? In a sense of, and to be more specific,
do you find yourself comparing yourself a lot?
Not comparison, no. Not, at least not in the sense of I need to be like someone else, but more so I need to do better to be loved how I want to be loved, how I want to be appreciated, how I want to be valued as a person, as a female, as a wife, as a girlfriend, as a lover, whatever it may be, right? I can say humbly and truthfully, I have never compared myself with anyone else, and I have never been wanting to be anyone else but me.
That's true. I can completely attest to that.
I'm a biggest critic of myself, and I always want to be the best version of me. And going through a situation where I've had to go through insecurities was on E. And I was running on E for many years, to a point that I didn't know me anymore. Where did I go? Because I was just giving, not receiving anything in return. And I would say that was my insecurity is that I'm not good enough. Because I'm not receiving that love, I'm not receiving that acknowledgement, I'm not receiving that support, so I'm not good enough. It was really impactful mentally, physically. It affects you in so many ways, because you do so much, you put in so much time and effort
to your family,
to your family, to the person that you love, your significant other. Yeah. And it drains you. It's extremely exhausting, because what you were doing naturally, now you're going like the extra miles,
so they can notice and acknowledge. And essentially, I think a lot of people, not men and women, can relate to that. Where I hear that all the time, constantly. I'm doing all of these things. I'm making sure they're okay with this. I'm buying this and doing this, but then they're not reciprocating that.
Absolutely.
And then, I mean, for a personal perspective, and that, like, it starts to drain on you. It starts to, like you questioned, for me, it was impacting my work. It was impacting like, well,
it affects everything in general.
Yeah.
Everything, all of your surroundings, your entire life in general, period. Yeah. It does. And it's unfortunate, but that's, you know, it is what it is.
There was some things that we had did some research on that, and the 4 signs of it, 4 signs of insecurity in a relationship. And I'll list it out. It's difficulty with intimacy, jealousy, low self-confidence, and reacting strongly, like severe, like an unintentional trigger. And definitely those are 4 signs of the insecurity in a relationship, especially when it's how do you overcome it? You know, we've talked about it being time, patience, grace, help. And what do you feel like has been the best thing that's helped you to overcome those insecurities in being a woman?
For me, a lot of self-healing when it comes to counseling, for sure. Self-search, soul searching, lots of trying to find who I am as a person, who I want to be.
It again.
Exactly. There's a lot of that. There was a lot of that. There's still a lot of that. Growth doesn't come out of the blue. You have to work towards it. And in order for you to overcome a lot of your insecurities or whatever you lack on, you have to work towards it. There's a lot of great books out there to read that help with that, to help with your mind. Meditation worked a ton. I'm a great advocate of yoga. It helps me to relax.
I really have to try that.
Yoga and meditation. I absolutely recommend it because it does help to calm your mind, be still, and just listen to your thoughts and your body, and just have all of your senses and just feel everything around you aside from whatever's in your head.
Yeah.
There's always going to be things going through your head, but if you can just be still for a moment and not have to worry about doing dishes or cooking or wiping or changing the diaper or responding to that work email or whatever it may be, and just staying still. Take 10, 15, 20 minutes of your day and just connect with yourself. It truly, truly, truly helps. And for those who like yoga, I would recommend it 100%. It helps. That's what I've done to help my insecurities, to help myself to connect and go back to, okay, who is it that I want to be? Where do I want to be? I need to center myself to start that process. Because if you're still with all of those crazy emotions, you're never really going to get there. There's no way, because you're still flustered. A lot of people seek detrimental things to themselves, such as, I don't know, alcohol or drugs, any type of drug, right? Or maybe just any type of toxicity, like getting together with individuals who are just extremely bad for them, losing their jobs, so on, the list goes on. Anything that's toxic to them, that is complete, that is it doesn't add to their life. So for me, it has been those things. It's just focusing on self-growth and mostly inner peace. That's what's helped me to get out of that funk.
And I've honestly seen a lot of growth with you just in the last 12 months. And I can say that there's a huge difference where obviously there was different stages of grief, and we all go through that. We still go through that sometimes. But definitely the meditation, yoga. So many times I've told myself I'd do that. Haven't. not yoga. Meditation, yes, but meditation while I'm walking. I like to be outdoors. For me, I can walk for a long time. I can walk every day because that's how I connect.
Yeah.
And just hear the sounds and just not have any music on, because I just need to be by myself.
Yeah.
So for me, that's what's helped me with my insecurities, is just obviously a lot of talking to professional therapists, because sometimes we need that non-biased listening person.
Absolutely.
Who doesn't know anything about you or your family or what you've been through.
Yes.
And just a lot of focus on my growth, personal, professional. You know, it's not going to be there isn't an end into that. You will constantly be faced with different things in your life, and this just happens to be something that works for both of us, the yoga and meditation for you, and the walking and the meditation workouts for me. But honestly, it not getting stuck.
Workouts are very good. Yeah.
Whatever you can do to step away from the things that put you into that place of being insecure. It takes time and effort to get through that.
Thing. Journaling is another thing. Connecting with other folks that have had similar experiences. But building up your self-esteem truly is one of them. And finding the root cause of your insecurity and addressing it. It's very important, because if you don't know sometimes we don't know where we build up those insecurities, where they come from, right? Because we're just focused. We're just focused on what's at hand, and we have so much going on, and we just forget. And then all of a sudden we feel a certain way. We don't know how or why.
How we got
there. And that's why we need to do that soul search and try to find the root cause so that we can work towards it. It doesn't necessarily have to come from a relationship. It can come from an experience with your parents as you were growing up, or maybe something that happened as you were younger in your childhood years, whether you were in school or whatever it may have been.
Right.
But definitely finding the root cause would help. Internally first, and address, if you have a partner, address it with your partners and talk about it. If you're in a relationship, with whatever, just have that open communication. As you mentioned earlier, communication is so important to have in a relationship. A lot of us don't do that because we don't want to. We want to be sensitive to the other person and say, well, if they think this, well, maybe they're not going to like it. I don't know how they're really going to perceive it. I don't know how to say it. Maybe I'm not the best communicator. Or some of us are just very straightforward and blunt, and hey, I'm just going to say what I'm going to say, and you're going to hear me, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
But it's good to communicate in a respectful way in a very safe environment. So perhaps you don't want to do it at your house. You don't want to do it in your bed. You don't want to do it in your bedroom, in your living room, but go out to dinner and have those type of conversations. They're healthy. They're good. It's good to have them because it's going to build up a much better future, not just for the relationship, but also as individuals. Also acknowledge the need from your partner to ease your insecurity, right?
Yes.
That's a great way. And you also touched on that earlier when mentioning those things. It's like, okay, well, I have an issue with this. Be open. It feels safe enough to have that conversation with your significant other. This happened to me, or I feel a certain way. Give me some time, or perhaps let's have some boundaries around this topic or this instance or this scenarios, because I'm working towards this, or I'm working on this because of that.
Yeah. And I think that's something you also have to try to, you have to do that in front of your kids, because you want to teach them, you want to stop that cycle of whatever triggers you're having, because you don't realize. I mean, for me personally, it impacts your kids, because they see.
If you have children, yes.
Yeah, if you have children, or even if you have younger people around you, especially if you're in a mentor really mentee relationship.
Yeah,
communication is huge.
Absolutely.
And I think, and for me, knowing, so I'm a veteran, and I've worked with been around a lot of veterans, and it's important for the communication to be had for what triggers them in different situations. It's no different in any other relationship. If something triggers you, or if you know something is something you struggle with, communicate that with the people around you.
Yeah.
And it comes down to that, just communicating.
Yes, absolutely. And trusting your partner.
Yes.
Stop overthinking. Trust your partner. Trust yourself with the community. Trust yourself mainly with the message that you're trying to convey, or the message you're conveying to someone else. Because if it comes from your heart and you know that you mean well, then it is the right thing.
Yes.
If the other part,
it's the healthiest thing.
The healthiest thing is to communicate.
Yes.
Yep.
On that note, we're going to wrap it up. Again, thank you for listening. We look forward to connecting with all of you and adding more value to our listeners. Please subscribe and stay notified to all of our published episodes.
Thank you for listening today.
Bye.
Bye-bye.